I don't know how to describe it other than like a demon type of sound.
But it's silhouetted, hulking, every bit of 5.5 feet wide, 13 to 14 foot tall, pitch black.
The one thing that ran through my mind when I had this encounter was I don't have a big enough gun.
Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to Creek Devil.
My name's Justin from Bend, Oregon. I've spent most of my life as a river guide, whether fishing or whitewater, mostly fishing. And now I'm employed as a outdoor TV producer. And I'm a lifelong hunter and elk hunter and fisherman, and I've spent a lot of time in the outdoors. I've been fortunate enough to make a living doing what I love, which is being outside and, fishing, whether it's fishing or hunting. But being outside in beautiful places is, yeah.
That's your thing.
That's my thing.
All right. Tell me about your first experience, year, what you were doing.
So it was in 1996, and a friend of mine that grew up in a town in Oregon called John Day, he had since moved to Bend, and at this time Bend, Oregon was kind of a small town. It was still like being it was on the heels of being a logging community, but it wasn't really a tourist town like it is now. It was a smaller town. It was 18,000 people. Now it's 100 and something. And yeah, that was 30 breweries ago, or 29 breweries ago, because the Schuster Brewery was here. Anyway, we went out to an area out by John Day, Oregon, and it was in the Murders Creek district, and we were camped in a place called. It was the first night of our hunt, and we had camp all set up, and it was two of us and my dog, my Brittany. Her name was Keela, and she went everywhere with me, and that dog was fearless. I mean, she was a pain in the ass dog. She was a good bird hunting dog sometimes, but she was a pain in the ass. She'd attack, God, I can't believe she even lived as long as she did, but she'd get in fights with coyotes and bobcats, and like if there was a wild animal in the woods, she attacked it, even if it was a bear, and she had no chance. That was just her nature.
And now you're out bow hunting. Is that
bow
right?
hunting,
and you're
yeah.
hunting for
deer, for mule deer, yeah,
mule deer.
yeah. And
you're camped.
We're camped out. Yep.
What's it like around there? Describe the terrain and the habitat.
It's kind of in the southern. It's a finger of the Blue Mountains, so it's in the Strawberry Mountains, which are a finger of the Blue Mountains, and we were camped 100 yards from a logging road next to a creek. It's timbered ridges, but, fairly open, not alpine. We're kind of in the lower country. There's nice alpine in the Strawberries, but we were down in kind of like the foothills of the Strawberries, basically. We have camp set up, and we have dinner and, have a couple of beers, and we're getting ready for bed. It's about 10:30, and do the dishes, and we're getting in the rack. We just get in the tent, and we're just laying down to go to sleep, and we hear this scream, and it sounded like, I don't know. It sounded like, the best way I can describe it is it sounded like a woman getting raped in the woods. And it went on for a long, long time. And I've heard cougars scream. I've heard screech owls. I've heard lots of elk bugle. I've heard all that shit. And this was like hair-raising. Every time I tell this, I don't tell this story much, but it gives me goosebumps to even, that sound was scary.
Where was it? Could you tell where it was coming from, Justin?
Yeah, it came from across the logging road up this hill, and there was a bluff up on top, and then I walked into that bowl the next day, and I got the creeps when I was in there. It was a really weird little micro environment out there, and it was really, really dense and really cold, and it was like this weird little foggy bowl half a mile away from where our tent was, probably. as the crow flies.
As the
But
crow-
you had to go up a bank, not a super steep bank, but a 45-degree hill, and then up on top of the ridge, it came from right in there.
And the creek was behind you.
The creek is behind us.
Yeah,
Yep.
gotcha.
So it was across the logging road up on this hill.
And it's at
And the
night.
creek was small, so that was at about 10:30 at night.
What was it? What was the temperature? Would you estimate?
I'm gonna say it was probably 60 degrees, high 50s, maybe 60 degrees up there.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking. This is opening weekend, is late August for archery in Oregon usually, or 1st of September. But yeah, so it was late summer.
And did you hear just one single scream?
It was just one long trailing scream, and it changed octaves. Like maybe it was catching its breath in between. I don't know, but it definitely changed. It would change the volumes, and it was just bizarre.
What did you guys do after you heard it?
We gathered. We were bow hunting, but we had rifles with us, hunting rifles, scoped. Shot a 270. I shot a 300 Winchester Magnum. We got those guns and we went in the tent, and my dog was cowering in the corner of the tent. And that dog, like I said, she wasn't afraid of anything. And she was cowering in the tent just from that sound.
Very peculiar.
Yeah.
You've not seen her do that.
No,
You had not
no,
seen her.
I had never seen her do that.
So you heard it. You heard the long scream. What did you two do?
We just laid low in the tent, and we were like, well, I mean, I don't know. We have elk and deer rifles. I don't know. What are we going to do? Like, we didn't really know exactly what it was. So we just wrote it out.
Okay, makes sense.
And nothing, we didn't hear anything else that night. We woke up in the morning, our camp wasn't disturbed. And we got up and we went hunting. And then we stayed there for 5 or 6 more days. We were there for like 9 days. And nothing else happened to us on that trip. It was mellow. But the part of the story I forgot to tell was cousin who lived in John Day had come up with his girlfriend and had dinner with us, and he had just left right when this happened.
Okay.
So he had just left. We did the dishes, cleaned up, got in the tent, and that's when we heard that sound.
Okay. And was this just the two of you, and then those two came to visit you? And
They
then
came
took
up
off?
from John Day to come visit us. They just came up for dinner.
Was there anybody around you guys camped?
No,
Okay.
no. There was a camp or two a few miles up the creek. That was we were probably a mile off the pavement, camped up. Yep, on a gravel road.
Yeah.
Yep, but not overly remote area really, because was several logging roads in there, and there's logging traffic in the morning at 5 a.m. Those logging trucks were ripping up that gravel.
And you didn't hear it for the rest of the 5 days? Nothing happened?
Nothing happened to us.
Okay.
Nope, didn't hear anything. I went into that area where I thought where we heard that sound. I went where I thought that may have originated. And that's when I got in that area, and it was really odd because, you're walking around in the woods in late summer, there's birds chirping and squirrels, and that place was silent. And there was something about it that just gave me the creeps, and it was quiet, and it was cold, and it was just just gave me a weird feeling being in there, and I got out of there.
How cold was it then at that time of the year anyway?
Well, 90 degrees in the heat, but not in that area. It was noticeably colder than the rest of the woods.
What would you estimate the elevation of that place to be, that area?
I think it's about 4,000 feet. Yeah.
Okay.
I think John Day's 3,500, 3,800, something like that. And then we were a little higher than that. But then there's the mountain close to that. That goes up to, I think it's 8,000 feet or something. There's a pretty good, and Strawberry Mountain's 8 or something like that. I mean, it's alpine.
Yeah. Okay. All right. What happened next? You had another.
Yeah. So people, the few people I've told this story to always ask you, why did you go back to that same place? But we went back to that same place, and it was in the following spring. And
did you get a deer that year?
That year, I don't think I did.
Okay.
No, I don't think I
But
did.
you had you been familiar with that
I missed
area
I
before?
missed a big buck that year. I had a big buck jump my string. Actually, a mule deer, which is rare. They usually don't do that. But
Was this a spot you'd been to before? I
Yeah.
didn't ask you. Okay.
Yep.
So you're familiar with it, and it's good hunting, and
yeah,
Yeah.
it was really good. It was really good deer hunting
yeah,
at the time. Yeah, there was-
understandable.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, and there was good elk hunting in there too. But I was just bow hunting mule deer at the time. So the following spring we went back to the exact same camp, and it was April. It was right when it was starting to get nice in Central Oregon, and you get spring. Everyone has cabin fever, and where can we go? How do we get outside? And so we ended up going out there, and it was my same friend and my girlfriend at the time came along with us. So there was three of us. We went set up camp in the same spot. Same dog, Keela. We went out and we were shooting pocket gophers for the day. And we got back to camp and his girlfriend, and he had another buddy with him with maybe his girlfriend too. So I think there was 4 of them that came from John Day. And we had a big dinner. We got back to camp. My girlfriend went to bed. She was exhausted. So we cooked dinner and hung out by the campfire for a little bit, and then about 10 o'clock, I was doing the dishes, and my girlfriend got up to help me clean up the dishes, and my friend went over to the creek to go relieve himself, and we heard him fire his handgun, and it was a .22 revolver, and he just fired off all 5, like he fanned it. I'm like, what the hell? And he comes running back into camp. He's like, this big animal just jumped out of the creek bed, this big black thing, and it's on 2 legs running across the road. And I had in my truck one of those giant spotlights that we'd use for setting up camp late at night. And so I get that out, and my ex-girlfriend, she ran across the road. She takes off. And so I get the spotlight out, and I can see it. It's just come off the road. I can see her, and it's on the other side of the road in the timber. And she comes running back to camp, and she's like, hey, she comes over by me, and I'm like, I got it. Look, see it? She's like, yeah, I got right next to it. It was whistling at me. So we're watching it, and it's running across the hillside, and it's flying. It's fast, and it's dodging through trees, and it's moving like a gymnast is the best way I can describe it. And it like grabbed a couple of limbs and like hopped off a limb and caught air and landed and kept going and was hauling ass.
Now, Justin, is this on the same hill where you
Same
heard
hillside,
it the
just
year before?
below where we had heard that vocalization, just on the lower tier of that same slope.
And is it running parallel?
It's running parallel.
Okay, cross.
Yep, maybe a slight bit uphill, but mostly parallel.
And about how far from you was it?
Probably 300 yards.
About 300.
Yep.
And was it what time of the day was it?
This is 10:30 at night.
10:30 at night. Did you still have visibility?
No, just
Okay.
through the a million candle
Through your candle,
a
your
million
spotlight.
candle power spotlight.
You'll light up the
10:30
area.
at night.
Yeah.
You can see anything.
Yep. Okay. So you
Yeah.
got it. It's trained on this thing, and it's about 300 yards away, and it's going across the hill. About how far did it travel? From where to where?
I'm gonna guess probably 200 to 300 yards, probably where it crossed the road, and I first got it, and where it actually stopped, because it stopped, and it was hunkered down behind the stump, and there was a tree and a stump, and it was behind the stump looking at us, and its eyes were, they were reflective. They looked like a deer or an elk's eyes, that same reflectivity. They weren't red, they weren't, it was just an animal's reflective eyes, like same as a house cat. And so it's sitting there looking at us, and this is the part of the story that I do regret. And we started shooting at it. And, when I was a kid, we used to go out in the desert and we'd shine rabbits, and they're not, shooting at night is the same as shooting at day, and maybe it's even easier because all you have is the target. There's nothing around it. And I don't know how we didn't hit it. We had scoped rifles, but it had no reaction. So it just sat there and was looking at us, and we couldn't scare it off. It wasn't scared. It just stayed there. And we were like, all right, well, I guess let's just climb in the tent and hunker down. And that's what we did. And the three of us sat in the tent and just waited and listened. And we didn't hear anything. And eventually we all fell asleep. And when we got up in the morning, we went right to where we had it jump out of the creek bed. And there we found one single footprint, and it was 6.5 wide, 11 long, and it was just from the arch of a foot forward going up a bank in hard clay. And I jumped up and down. I weighed 215 pounds, and I couldn't even make an indentation. And that's the only footprint we found. And from there, it jumped onto the gravel road, and then it ran across, and that was all pine needles over there. And we looked for blood, we looked for tracks, and we never found anything over there. But we found that one print, and it was plain as day. And it looked like a giant human's footprint.
How about the tree where it was crouched? Did you make it up to that stump?
Yes.
Yeah. What was that like around that area?
There was a big old growth ponderosa and a stump that was probably 4 feet high. So it was crouched down behind the stump, and it had that tree to its right, and it could see our camp from there.
Could you describe its silhouette?
It looked like it was a big dark shadow running really fast through the woods. I mean, I can't say definitively that I saw any hair on it, but it looked like a big, long, tall, shadowy thing that was extremely fast.
And could you tell it was running on 2 legs there?
Oh, for sure.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
And you saw it do something, like you said, handling
branches
branches and
whatever. It was running,
else.
Yeah, the timber there was pretty dense. And so it was using, to gain speed, to keep its balance, because it was running across the slope. And I've done this since, what would I do if I were running across this same kind of terrain? And when you're sprinting as fast as you can, you're using trees to jump and keep your balance and stay up on your, the balls of your feet. And how fast can I run through the woods on a slope?
Yeah, and you're a fit guy. You're, for people who are listening or reading, you're how tall?
I'm 6'2".
You're 6'2", and you're trim, and you look like you're fairly athletic. Like you could have, would that have been a hard run for you?
Oh yeah,
what
for
that
sure.
was
doing? I ran across it and tried to do the same thing, and it was very slow.
Okay, so
probably would have sprained my ankle if I would have given it a little more effort.
You couldn't have done it, really.
No,
not like
no
that.
way.
Not like that.
No way.
Okay, that's right.
Usain Bolt couldn't have done that.
Okay, and when you're looking at it and it's peeking up over the stump and moving behind a stump, you could see its eyes.
Yep.
Could you see the shape of its head and its shoulders?
How
much of it could you see?
It had, I don't know, what if Chewbacca's sitting behind a stump, I guess. Okay. It had definitely that cone-shaped head. And I don't recall seeing the shoulders. you could really just see its head and its eyes, and it was moving around back there, you know. I mean,
And you guys were how many rounds did you shoot off?
We both emptied our rifles. So mine holds 4, probably holds 5 or 6.
And you did 300?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had some firepower.
Yeah, we did.
And you're a pretty good shot, I would imagine.
I've hunted a lot. And, you know, at the time, I had read Grover Krantz's book prior to this. Because you hear a lot of stories growing up in Oregon. And I'd met a lot of hunters from the coast and the Wallowas and around. And I'd heard stories. I was aware, like, I was open to the idea of Sasquatch being real. I didn't necessarily believe in it, but I was interested. So I read a book called Big Footprints by Grover Krantz, and he was the anthropologist at Washington State, and you know, his point was that we needed to get a body to prove that this thing exists so we can protect it. Otherwise, it'll be wiped out. So I guess that was in my head, but I don't agree with that. And what we did was wrong, and I don't think, if you see one, I don't think you should shoot at it.
Okay.
Leave it be. We don't know what the hell. We don't know. To say we have to kill one to prove it to science is a human thought. But we don't know. This is out of our realm. We don't know what the importance of the Sasquatch is. We don't know what role it plays, and we may never know. We probably will never know. Trump's our president. I don't think we're going to probably, you know, enlighten ourselves here in the next little bit and figure this thing out.
Did you think when you first heard that scream, after you let that percolate for a bit and sit with you, did you think that's what you were hearing?
Oh yeah, it was in our, we did talk about it. We're like, that could have only really been, what was it? You know, and we were both like, maybe it was a Sasquatch.
And then the next year,
because everything, when you check everything else off the list, you're left with something that you can't explain.
The next year when you went, were you hopeful? Were you thinking?
No, not. I hadn't even really crossed. I mean, it sounds unbelievable, but it really didn't cross my mind. I mean, we heard a vocalization, and we didn't know what it was. But no, it was. We didn't even really think about it.
Now, your girlfriend at the time had an experience. Is that correct, or was
she
it?
Did? Yeah.
So
she
talk about that, because she did something that I would imagine most people would never do.
Run towards it. Yeah, she did it instantly. Yeah.
Did that surprise you, by the way?
Not knowing her.
Okay.
She was a wild card. Perfect girlfriend for your 20s. No, she was, her family was cool. They all grew up in Roseburg, and her extended family grew up down in Grangeville, California, which is down in Humboldt, and those guys, you know, they lived out in the middle of nowhere, and so anyway, when she was a kid, and she had told me this before, but she was riding a horse by herself up near Roseburg, and this creature followed her back, and it was like shaking in the bushes, and the horse was freaked out, and it followed her down this trail for miles, and she had the horse at full gallop, and it was keeping up with her, and it scared the hell out of her. But I think she kind of took away from that. Like, if that thing wanted to hurt me, it would have hurt me. It was just having fun with me, probably. Yeah. So I guess she didn't have much fear, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, no, she was quick to go across the road, and it whistled at her. So
now,
maybe it was the same one. Maybe it thought she was cute.
It'd been following her around.
Yeah.
Now, so there were how many people that night that actually saw this go down?
Just the three of us.
The three of you.
Yep, the other people had just left, so it was the three of us.
So took shots too.
Yep.
And so he saw it. Talk about the aftermath of this.
So especially when we found the footprint, you know, it's like, okay, well, because you know what you saw, but having the physical evidence in front of you, like, okay, well, we saw a Sasquatch, and there's one here, and this kind of changes everything, really. It really does, because it changes. I mean, it really does. It changes your view on the outdoors, and it changes your your kind of perspective on what you think you know, and like, how do we not know about this?
Yeah, I mean,
this is a real thing, and like, how are we all going through life as these ignorant morons? And there's a being that lives in the woods that we know nothing about, and has a completely like hidden existence from us. But I mean, it makes perfect sense when you get in a plane and fly from Missoula to Spokane, or fly from San Francisco to Medford, or fly from Seattle to BC or whatever, and you look at that amount of country that's out there. There could be anything out there. We don't know everything, and I mean, that's interesting.
Yeah, and you came away with a real appreciation for that. Is that
for
right?
sure? Yeah. And never would I ever, if I ever get lucky enough to see another one, which I doubt I ever will, I would never raise a rifle towards that animal. Just let it be.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what happened to.
Just he lives in Bend. He just doesn't talk about it much, I mean, and I don't either. But like, he wouldn't come and chat with you about it, He just kind of put it away.
Did you two talk about it after?
Oh yeah, every time I see him, I'll probably see him tomorrow, and yeah, we talk about it. I mean, he doesn't deny it. He knows what happened.
He hasn't gone back looking for it or anything.
No,
Okay.
No. He just kind of got on with his life. Now, was his cousin, and he moved away. He moved to the city. I haven't heard from him in years, but he was the guy that was there with us before we had that encounter. Before we had all three of these encounters. There's another encounter in the same area that I haven't told you about yet, but. Yeah, he left. He bailed. Yeah, he didn't have a good vibe about that.
Well, tell me about the next happening.
So the same campsite, following fall, bow seasoned again. So this started in the fall of '96, and then the spring of '96, and so now we're into the fall of. I guess we're in the fall of fall 96, spring 97. So now we're in the fall of 97. And it was opening day. It was hot as hell that year. And opening day of archery deer season, I shot a little buck. And so we got back to camp about noonish or so, and I got that deer cut up as quickly as I could and put the meat on ice. And I remember the meat bees were terrible that year. I got stung like 17 times cutting that thing up. And so I took the carcass away from camp to get it away from camp so the meat bees wouldn't be around our camp, yellow jackets. And so there was 5 of us, actually. I was the only one really hunting. There's 5 of us, and so we, I get the buck cut up, and we're just kind of hanging around camp, just relaxing, enjoying nice weather, and camp out with your buddies. And from John Day drives up with his girlfriend, and I think it was just the 2 of them. I don't remember. Sometimes he'd bring another friend, or I know that other time he had another buddy and maybe another girl, but I think it was just him and his girlfriend. And so they hung out with us, and I cooked everyone dinner, and we were doing the dishes, and those guys took off, and so the 5 of us were just sitting there, and it was the same time of night. It was always like between 10 and 10:30 that something went down, and we heard footfalls come off the hillside. Now this is the opposite side of the creek. So, yeah. So this time it came from the creek side, not the road side, and it thudded down the hill, and we all sat there in silence. And I look at you. Believe this? This is actually happening again, and it ran into the grove of trees where it hung the deer up, and it was across the creek, and you couldn't see in there. It was a little like kind of circular grove of 10-foot high trees, and then there was a big ponderosa up above it that we used with a big crossbar limb where we hung the deer 10 feet off, 8 feet off the ground or something the first time. And it went into that grove of trees, and you could hear it making all sorts of noise, and clearly it ripped the deer down. And so we got guns out and we fired them in the air to scare it off. But it wasn't like we fired a shot and it ran away. Like it took several rounds and it took a bit to scare it off. It wasn't scared. And then it didn't run off. You could hear it just kind of march off. And you could totally hear it walk off. And it was, I think it was trying to be loud. And so we all walked single file across the creek, and we had a log down that you walked across. We all went over there with flashlights and guns, and we found the carcass on the ground. And so then we hung it up like 10 feet off the ground, like to where it was 10 feet off the ground.
What did you think? What did you think had grabbed it?
A Sasquatch.
Okay, so you all were of the same opinion.
Joe and I for sure.
Yeah, so you guys knew it. What did those other guys do?
They were just kind of freaked out.
Okay.
And maybe they thought we were putting them on, or we had some sort of, I don't know. I mean, they were freaked out, but they were along for the ride, So we hang it back up. We go back to camp, and not 10, 15 minutes later, it comes back. And it yanks it down again.
Did you hear the same thing?
Same thing. Thud, 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 thud. And then it was making weird sounds. I mean, it was like growling like a bear, and then it was like almost oinking like a pig some of the time. Like really weird freaking sounds. And same deal, man. It was harder to scare off the second time. But we heard it walk off, and we went single file, and we hung it 12 feet off the ground, as high off the ground as we could get it. It must have been 12 feet off the ground. And it came back, same deal. We went back to camp, not 10, 15 minutes later, it came back, and it got it down a third time. And that time we all just sat there and listened to it until it was done with it. And then it left. And then we went over there, and the carcass, I mean, I cut all the quarters off of the deer, so it was just like the rib cage, the neck, and where the legs and shoulders, just the carcass, and so it was pretty clean when I put it over there. But the one piece of meat I didn't get to because I got stung by bees, and I was like, oh, forget it, was the rib meat. So the rib meat was intact. And when we went over there and found it, the rib meat was all gone. And it looked like someone, like the only way you can do that, you take your knife and you put it in there and cut those out. You can't rip those out of there. But this thing ripped every individual strip of rib meat out of the carcass.
Justin, how long did it take for that? No, wait.
The last time?
Yeah, the first time and the second time, did you see any action on the carcass? Was it?
Didn't notice anything.
Nothing
no, not really, because it was dark for one, and then didn't really inspect it per se. But I definitely noticed that the ribs were still intact until the third time, and the third time it probably had it on the ground for 5 minutes.
So pretty quick.
Pretty quick,
yeah.
Maybe 5 minutes. I don't know.
And you're listening.
Maybe 5 minutes. We just listened to it.
What was it? What did it sound like as you're listening?
It was like it sounded like a bear and like a pig kind of. It was squealing some too. It was like growling and squealing. It was really a creepy, weird freaking sound.
Okay.
And then it took off, and I stopped by that place once several years ago, just in passing in the daylight, just to go look at it. but I've never gone back. One of our friends that was with us on that trip that last time, he moved to Alaska, and we don't really hear from him again. I don't know if that's why, but it seems kind of circumstantial. And the logger kid from John Day that was there every time before something showed up, before all this stuff happened, each time he moved. He moved. He's gone. He's done.
How has this changed you?
Well, before this happened, we grew up hunting and everything, but my dad was he'd shoot coyotes on site, and I used to go out and I'd shoot rabbits and I'd shoot gophers, and I killed stuff, and stuff that I didn't eat. And I've never, ever since, ever shot anything that I didn't intend to eat. Because I think that I believe, personally, I believe that the Sasquatch is the defender of the forest. And if you violate the code of the forest, then he's going to come visit you. Okay. And you don't necessarily want to see one. I mean, I'm glad I did. I'm glad I feel fortunate that I got this life lesson, because I'm a better hunter. I'm a better person now, and I can pass this on to my kid, about the ethics of the outdoors and how you approach the outdoors and how you conduct yourself. And without this experience, then I might have, gone on being an idiot and killing stuff for no reason.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning, @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out there.